extraordinary leaders, each of whom brings unique expertise and insights into this conversation. So our first panelist is Mr. Macharia Kamau, Ambassador and Special Envoy of Kenya. Dr. Kairasha Abdul Karim, it's the president of the World Academy of Sciences and the renowned epidemiologist. Dr. Mark Walport, Vice President and Foreign Secretary of the Royal Society in the UK, with a distinguished career on science policy and research funding. Professor Tiatu Louis Matainao is the President of the Pacific Academy of Sciences and represents the vital perspective of island nations. Dr. Sydney Shami, Director General of the Arab Council for Social Sciences, that has contributed significantly to integrating social sciences into broader scientific discussions. Dr. Saif Idabi, and the Secretary of Research and Innovation of Foraman, combines deep academic expertise with strategic leadership in shaping Oman's research and innovation landscape. So let's dive into the discussion. And right now I would like to ask the panelists to share with us their insights, their first introductory insights, and then we will go into questions, and I hope we will have time also to open the floor to you. I will start now with Ambassador Kamau to share his brief remarks.
Thank you very much. A very good morning to everybody. There is no question that the issue of collaboration has become central to the challenge that we are facing in driving the changes that we need to see in our world, and particularly in accelerating some of the developmental and scientific challenges that we need to accelerate in order to meet and combat and protect science, but as well as drive the changes that we need to see in our world. There's no question in my mind that we have a few key issues that we need to focus on. The first is that the complexity and the wickedness of the global challenges that we are facing is central to why science has to play the role that it needs to play. Because only science can address some of these wicked problems and bring forward the solutions that we need to bring. But policymakers, politicians, development workers, people in society also need to be brought to the table. And we heard earlier today in some of the presentations that were made here that we need to find a way to bring together both the scientists, the policymakers, development workers, practitioners across the board. So we are not going to be able to deal with the complexity and the interconnectedness of these problems in climate change, pandemics, inequality, unless we focus on this issue of complexity. Secondly, the technological challenges and achievements that have happened over the last 20 or 30 years have moved everything along. The pace of technological progress, particularly in the fields that we've heard today on AI, data science, genomics, and other areas, has really altered the way in which research can be and is being conducted. And I think this needs to be taken into account if we are to understand how we are going to get the collaborative work between scientists, between policymakers, to work in a way in which we can see the benefits that we need to see in our world. I think thirdly, the rise of the issue of open science and data sharing. You see, the rise of open access publishing and open data platforms means that researchers today can collaborate more broadly, but need to do so with free availability of research materials. And this can only happen if people are collaborating across borders and across institutions. This also requires a cultural change among scientists themselves, because to be able to produce the kind of results that we want now means that scientists themselves have to engage differently in the context of coming up with the kind of results that we're looking to see. A fourth issue is the diverse stakeholders. As I said earlier, today's research is often conducted in partnership with various stakeholders. I think we heard today from, I think it was the Saudi presentation, how governments, private sector, companies, NGOs, and the public have to come together. And collaborative science isn't just about researchers working among themselves anymore, but working across these various stakeholders. And lastly is the issue of the increased funding and competition. The issue of funding is central to how we're going to make sure that the best science comes to the fore. Already the International Science Council is confronted with this challenge. They've come up with global science missions that are trying to address the key challenges of attaining sustainable development and sustainability, but at the same time, they have to find the right funders who can come to the table to fund these missions to drive sustainability and the attainment of the SDGs. So these, for me, are the key areas that we need to focus on in order to get where we need to get to for collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and without further ado, I'll pass to Kairisha.
Thank you very much, Lydia. Thank you. Greetings, Assalamu alaikum. Let me use this opportunity to thank the organizers to be part of this panel. And making science central to finding solutions, we also have to recognize that science also has unintended consequences. Some of the challenges, for example, around climate change facing us is a result of that. But part of sustainable development has also an essential requirement of peace. Without peace, we cannot have sustainable development. And I think while some of the speakers in the morning session showed how science flourishes during wars and conflicts, that we, at this point and moment in time, have to really commit to peace for sustainable development. And what we also see as we move towards open science and working together and having solidarity is that we can be united, we can have solidarity, but there's huge inequities and inequalities across the globe. So when we look at the Global South in particular, we can see that the knowledge generation capacity is not there. So while we may have shared common problems that we need to address, and this is where partnerships and collaborations are important, there are also huge differences in our ability to generate knowledge and in our infrastructure to do that, in funding commitments that are made, And those need to be equalized and addressed and first recognized and then subsequently in a very intentional way addressed. I think that the disruptive technologies provide an opportunity, but even with that, we've seen how connectivity differs, how access to those disruptive technologies differ, and what the focus of those disruptive technologies are not necessarily aligned with problems that we face in the global south. And it's also dominated again by 5 big corporations and not much transparency there in terms of what is being done and its impact and influence on our lives. So in a way, there's an old motto that we had about thinking globally and acting locally. And I keep getting reminded that as we think about transformations, as we think about new systems, that's going to be really important. I think as we think about partnerships and collaborations, mutual respect and trust is central to that. And recognition that when we partner, for that partnership to be effective, each partner has to bring something to the table. Not just bring something to the table, but that by coming together, there's synergy in that partnership that allows us to tackle these complex challenges by consolidating what we have. We have to think beyond multidisciplinary to a kind of transcendental science. In fact, we're redefining how we generate knowledge and what that knowledge generation should look like. And I think at the end of the day, it's really important that when we're finding solutions, we don't think short-term only. And I think in a way, the Sustainable Development Goals that are like really upon us, 2030, is in a way a short-term goal. It's short-term solutions that we have to think longer term, and we have to be thinking and investing. Sustainable Development Goals offer us an opportunity, but we have to start moving beyond that and thinking about longer term solutions that ensure human security and a planet and an earth that we can hand over to many generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kadisha, for this first introduction. And I will move now to you, Mark, for your introduction.
Thank you very much indeed. This is the work.
You just have to open it. There is
Thank you very much indeed. So I want to build on the remarks that have been made by Ambassador Kamau and Qureshi Karim. It's important to recognize that collaboration is a means rather than an end in itself. And so collaboration is all about solving problems. And as we've heard from the ambassador, some of the problems we face require multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary assemblies of collaborators that are not typical of the traditional scientific collaboration. But it's just worth thinking for a second what collaboration actually means. For collaboration to work, the collaborators have to have a mutual investment in the success of the program. They basically have to be able to get the personal acknowledgement and gain that goes with being a full collaborator, and that's where the equity issue is really important. And picking up Qureshi's comment, the corollary of trust is trustworthiness, and therefore it's really important that collaborators work in trustworthy fashions. We should think about the sorts of problems that the organizations, the people in this room and their organizations tackle. So there are huge opportunities for discovery research, the research that has underpinned the technologies that we're talking about today. And a lot of those discoveries now require or have the opportunity to work at global scale. For example, building radio telescopes such as the Square Kilometre Array, which take advantage of the scale of our planet to look at the universe. There are then the wicked problems that have been talked about, the challenges of the global problems that frankly are not interested in national borders, climate, biodiversity, pandemics. But I think collaboration always has to be built around a problem and assembling a group of collaborators who are bespoke to that problem and can work in a spirit of mutual collaboration. There is a third small area of science which is much more deliberately developed with sort of peace objectives in mind. So, for example, IASA, the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis, was placed in Vienna as a means of bringing together US and Russian scientists together during the Cold War. More recently, the Sesame Synchrotron, located in Jordan, brings together nations that in other political terms are absolutely at loggerheads and in some cases at war with each other. There are big opportunities there. Finance has been talked about, and I'm afraid that's the one that I think the ISC is going to find very difficult to solve. Collaboration does require money, and that is a challenge where money is not equally available. But I just want to finish by saying that collaboration is not an unalloyed good. Collaboration can bring risks as well as opportunities, and the concept of research security is one that's becoming increasingly prominent. And I think sometimes that confuses two separate but equally important issues. So there's research that generates technologies, products that can be used both for beneficial but also for military and security purposes. And nations, not surprisingly, are worried about those. And then there is the global issue of theft of intellectual property and know-how. And I think sometimes there's a tendency amongst scientific communities to rather reject these as getting in the way of unfettered collaboration. But I'm afraid, I think, if there are sloppy attitudes or dismissiveness amongst the scientific community about these potential problems, it may endanger the beneficial advantages of collaboration that we've been discussing during this session. So collaboration, as I say, is a means, and we need to really think how we use those means to achieve a huge plethora of beneficial opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark, for this and for raising also what are the barriers and what are the concerns making scientific collaboration to be seen maybe from different lights. And with that, I really want to come to you, Steny, to really listen to your introductory remarks. And
Yes, it's working now. Thank you very much. The thoughts I jotted down echo very much points that have been made by other speakers, and especially Mark, the last speaker. I hope this is a case of great minds thinking alike rather than lack of originality on my part. But the 3 points that I noted down in the few minutes I have are equity, security, and the culture of research practices. I am an anthropologist and ethnographer, so my mind does go immediately into values, behaviors, practices, and the way in which, in this topic we're dealing with now, in the way they influence or challenge collaboration, especially across national boundaries. First of all, in terms of the social sciences, I think the social sciences have a great deal to learn from the natural and applied sciences in terms of collaboration in research. The social sciences are not very known, depending on the discipline. There are variations between the disciplines, but they're not generally known for collaborative work, teamwork. The notion of the laboratory is not primary in social science research. So I think the social sciences have a lot to learn from the natural and applied sciences, but they also may have insights into the impediments or the reasons for success and failure in collaboration. So coming first to the issue of equity, I thought to focus on equity in funding and the kinds of choices that appear in the funding streams that are available, and which of course vary depending on the part of the world. They vary according to theme, topic, discipline, and so on. But we all know that donor agencies do shape research agendas immensely, and that often there's a mismatch between donor priorities and the priorities of researchers in particular localities. We know this, but we don't seem to really have ways of addressing this or creating the kind of dialogues and spaces for discussion that can remedy this kind of inequities. This also often leads to fragmentation in research and to a lack of accumulation in research experience and accumulation in research findings. So agendas are often short-term or medium-term. More and more we see, at least in our part of the world here, we see very short-term agendas, which means that efforts are fragmented, findings are fragmented, and there's a lack of long-term work and accumulation of expertise and knowledge. North-South inequities, of course, in both in setting research agendas, but also in giving credit for the outputs of research, is a major problem. But one point I want to highlight in terms of inequities is the lack of funding for South-South collaboration. I know this from personal experience in the various institutions I have worked at, where initiatives that come from the South, that reach out to other parts of the South, often do not get funding. And all the cross-regional South-South sort of collaborations tend to be coordinated from the North. There is nothing inherently wrong with that, but it does mean that agendas that are set by researchers in the global South often do not find the kind of funding that they deserve. Coming to security, I think I just have a few things to add on issues of security. The securitization of types of knowledge, the securitization surrounding the sharing of data, the collaborations themselves, but also the way in which real security issues, real security concerns tend to, I'm using the word distract because I can't find a better word, but distract researchers from their long-term goals and engage them in issues of the moment, but these issues of the moment do not add up and do not accumulate into long-term agendas. I live in a country, I myself am from Jordan, but I live in Lebanon, and Lebanon is a country which has, and Jordan as well, receives hundreds and thousands of refugees as a result of regional crises. And so we see social science researchers constantly dealing with new, emerging, real-world problems, one after the other. And so this is a fact. This is a fact. This is not only to say there are problems with this. It's how to build this kind of crisis research of the moment into real understandings and analysis of these issues over the long term. Finally, I would like to just talk about the differences in research cultures that really do pose an impediment, especially for research across national borders. There are real differences in the way institutions of knowledge production are organized, the way the hierarchies are managed within these institutions, the way in which the division of labor and the practice of research is carried out. And often this leads to collaborations failing at the very first moment. We cannot overcome these differences in research practices. And this is not to say that some are better than others. They are simply different ways of organizing work and labor. And so we need the social science sort of understanding of these practices in order to find ways of mediating them. Finally, just to say I'm really delighted to hear, as the Arab Council for Social Sciences, we're really delighted to hear of the plans to establish a regional office of the ISC in Oman, and we look forward very much to being part of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steny, and also thanks for bringing us before the culture shift that we may achieve. But in that, we go now to Dr. Tiatu Loi, President of the Pacific Academy of Science. Really a pleasure to have you with us, and your introductory remarks on this topic.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be part of this panel. I'd like to first of all, extend my appreciation to the ISC for facilitating the establishment of the Pacific Academy of Sciences that was launched in October last year. Particularly, I want to extend my thanks especially to the President, Sir Peter Clarkman. Thank you so much, and the ISC Secretariat. Yeah, we are quite new and, so to speak, in the block. So we need all the support we can to get us established. I think that is really, in a sense, the message that I'd like to express. But I'd like to, as I think about the need to reimagine, if you like, the international science collaboration, I'm thinking about the need to, particularly for the Pacific really is a big, vast ocean space with a lot of immense resources and a population of about 13 million people with scattered islands in the Pacific. But that really ocean is what connects us together. Research is really important to us in the extent of how international collaboration can recognize the challenges of small population. Sometimes we target the problems of big population countries. How can we merge? How can we refocus, especially when there is a small population, global population, that is custodian to perhaps the biggest ocean space in the globe. That really makes a big difference and in that regard, an island, small island developing states that still grow in terms of respect to research capacity, lacking that research capacity, the need to build capacity to ensure that our institutions are able to also support collaboration. We know that for many decades, we have been the space for international researchers coming and carrying out research that contribute to global knowledge. But we also want to ensure that that knowledge also come back to address the fundamental problems of the Pacific Island. We are equally also faced with issues of climate change, as we know, biodiversity loss, health issues, one of the high rates of obesity and diabetes in the world, and of course energy issues as well, and communities that by and large rely heavily on traditional knowledge. And I think that is really an important part of a knowledge that often has been supporting the sustainability of livelihood in the Pacific Islands. But the need to access technology, as much as we want to use research to access funding, but we also want to ensure that access to genetic material also is reciprocate also the access to technology and funding too as well. I think that's all I want to express. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I think you brought the issue of, in one end, small populations that have needs that are specific, and indeed you are ocean countries, so a lot also to give to the world, but also the issue of traditional knowledge, scientific knowledge and technology. How can we make these systems really work and talk to each other. And it's part of the open science recommendation, how to bring the different knowledge systems together to get the best of them. And I think this is an important debate that I hope we can continue with the participants. And now I'm going to go to our host country, and you are the last because of that. We want to get inspired, Dr. Saif Al-Idabi, in what Oman is already doing, and the signing of the agreement with ISC is a sign of that political commitment and agenda. So your introductory remarks are welcome now.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum, all of you. I'm really happy to see this gathering from different parts of the world. This is really an example of science collaboration, a physical example. We know that science is really a universal language. It's not a one-nation language, and therefore collaboration is really working towards a common goal. And there are a number of challenges and common needs at the global level. We all need a clean environment, we all need peace, security, food, health, and I think these priorities are really well defined in the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And those goals, if we work towards them as a common achievement to achieve these goals, there is no way to achieve those goals without really science collaboration. However, in my opinion, science collaboration really face some challenges, but also there are opportunities and possibly a need for policy to reform science collaboration. If we start with the challenges, I mean, there are a number of challenges in terms of funding issues for science collaboration. There is also the cultural barriers, language barriers, trust in science. I think this is an issue. Sometimes, I mean, the trust is really in science start to decline, especially after or during the pandemic issue. Geopolitical tension is another issue. Sometimes actually scientists are prevented from participating in some scientific meetings because of this geopolitical tensions. So these are some of the challenges actually facing science collaboration. However, there are also opportunities. And opportunities really for science collaboration are huge. There are the physical platforms such as this meeting, for example, but there is also the new emerging technologies that allow us actually to meet and collaborate, such as the virtual platforms, virtual centers, the artificial intelligence platforms. I think these tools, although they have several dimensions, but they can be utilized very effectively for science collaboration. When it comes really to policy development, I think there is a need from such big bodies, science bodies around the globe, really to set some guidelines and standards around the science collaboration, especially during the time of geopolitical conflicts, because some scientists are actually, as I mentioned, are not really allowed to participate in some. Also, open science should be really promoted very well. Open publication, funding, lack of funding between nations is really diverse from one place to another. Availability of research tools and equipments. They are actually, this is the issue of equity. I mean, in some places you have some tools and equipments that are really need to be utilized for a common good, but they are prevented. There are actually barriers from using these things. I think these are really the important issues around science collaboration. What I want to end with, actually, we always read the Holy Quran, and it says, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. It means that please collaborate for the good things and do not collaborate for the sins and aggression. So this is actually the main message from the Holy Quran, which I want to end up with. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for reminding us that also the intent of collaboration is very important, and we should all collaborate for good and for peace. And I think you mentioned the importance of new technologies to spur and strengthen collaboration. At UNESCO, we have a very interesting program called the Remote Access to Laboratories, and I open up the information to all of you, and basically it's matching researchers that need access to certain laboratory equipments that they don't have, that can be assessed remotely in other laboratories elsewhere in the world. And through this remote access laboratory initiative, we are seeing new collaborations starting among different regions and inside the same region. I have more questions for my panel, but I want to open up a little bit the floor because I think we need to start talking to each other. And I'm going to move in so I can see you. But I see you already, but I'm going to ask a great favor. Please be short so that we can have 2 or 3 questions, we can have this wonderful panel to respond and create the interaction. So don't give your presentation now. Wait for coffee break or lunch, but please do ask your questions. Do we have microphones in the floor? Yes, but I have one person here in the front. Maybe you can come, I give you my microphone. I'm more near you than anybody. And then please distribute the...
Well, thank you very much. It was an excellent discussion. This is Dr. Aftab Ahmed from Pakistan. I'm early career researcher. So it was excellent discussion because you have addressed the challenges that we are facing and also the opportunities which are very much coming up. You know, the situation is very different. Like if we talk about the Europe, it's very easy to collaborate. And in our part of the world, for example, if we talk about India and Pakistan, the situation is very different. I just wanted to know, in the present era, if there are like more challenges, there are more opportunities in the form of digital tools, they are there. And also, there is technology which is available. So how we can capitalize those in a better way, that's one part. And other part which is very important, you know, the early career researchers, after 10 years, they will be the science leaders. So they will be at the key positions like in 10, 15 years. So if we make them to collaborate at this time, we can have much better collaboration in the future. So how we can foster that collaboration right at this time among the early career researchers?
Thank you very much. I have another one here in the front. Okay,
Hello.
1 and then 3.
Yeah. Thanks so much for this very important discussion. I'm Dr. Christina Yan Zhang from the Metaverse Institute in the UK. I noticed that a number of panelists has been highlighting the difficulties of financing. And we all know that currently worldwide, the global GDP is 105 trillion US dollars. But as a result of the pandemic, so global government debt is currently 97 trillion US dollars. So government worldwide are 91% in debt. And their contribution to research and innovation is a major part many of us will be relying very heavily on. So my question is, how can we diversify the university or research financing opportunities so that in the future we might be less reliant, on very tight public spending and existing donors, options? Can we maybe incentivize our researchers to have more opportunities to working with venture capitalists and investors to fast track the commercialization of any IP internationally through the great network of International Science Council? Thank you.
Thank you for your presentations. I think we have 3 examples of facilities for international collaboration. The first one is ICTP, International Center for Theoretical Physics, Abdus Salam Center. And the recent example is Sesame. Science for Peace is the best example, and I worked on in 1999 to 2008 on this project. It is a very important project, light source for the Middle East, and I hope we will have a light source under the auspice of UNESCO in Africa. We miss this facility. And CERN is, all these centers are a model, they take the model of CERN. And working in CERN is a multidisciplinary laboratory, multicultural also, but there is 2 handicaps. The first one is researcher mobility, especially for young PhD students, the problem of visa and other things, and also membership fees. I think we have the same problem, Morocco, South Africa, Pakistan, and Egypt participating in huge experiments, and we have really a problem. The membership fees is very high and expensive, but we haven't another solution. And I think that the best way for technology transfer is international collaboration with CERN, with other big science in Japan, in the United States. It is the short way to have a scientific community in the South.
Thank you so very much, and also for reminding all of us the work of UNESCO on Science for Peace. ICTP is a Category 1 institute of UNESCO. CERN starts being designed in UNESCO. Sesame, of course, very much part of also UNESCO work. But we have several issues and questions. I see, Mark, you want to start, and I will give you just the floor as you want.
Hello.
Thank you very much. So taking the Pakistani question first, the Young Academy, I think, is very important when it comes to young researchers. And I think one of the challenges, we talk about technology as being the solution. It's fine for people who know each other to work virtually. Meeting people and building collaborations online is actually far harder. And so I think the Young Academy is a really important initiative. And just on the Science for Peace point, if I may, I think the most important science for peace at the moment is around climate, biodiversity, sustainable water. It's water that's going to be the cause of wars in the future. Climate is already a contributor to wars in the present. And so, whilst I think examples like Sesame and IASA and the work on Mount Paktu, for example, are good examples, the thing that's going to matter most for peace in the future is having a habitable world.
There's a question from the floor. Here. How can you rethink international collaboration in a world that denies visas?
Okay, can we just answer the questions that were put, and then I come back to you if we are efficient in organizing ourselves? Thank you.
Sorry, there is one question here.
Okay, would you like me to go? Okay. Well, the lady who just spoke first spoke about visas. And, you know, there's no question that collaboration is undermined by the visa regime in the world. So rest assured, this is one of the things that needs to be addressed moving forward. But Also, looking at things from an African perspective, there's no question that collaboration is simply not reaching out to those who are most needy of collaboration. So in many African countries, I just do not get a sense that, that they are fully embedded in the global collaborative processes, in the global science systems in ways in which they need to be. And we can run away from this issue forever, but the fact of the matter is that it remains front and center as one of the biggest problematics of collaborative science on the planet. I also think that it's true, I think, about the issue of youth. I think there's an opportunity here. I think the digital world provides a very special opportunity for young people to connect to each other without visas on global internet platforms in ways in which it was impossible before. We are seeing this in political action, where young people are connecting between countries across continents, but I think it's also possible to do this effectively and transformatively for young scientists if they can find the opportunity. And lastly, on this issue of international, I mean the IPs, the intellectual property, the whole regime needs to be revisited. I don't know if we're going to talk about geopolitics, but there seems to be a fundamental problem with the way in which the intellectual property regime globally is being managed, and the way it seems to reinforce divisions between countries, between corporations, between peoples, rather than try to find ways to provide opportunities for people to enjoy the intellectual properties that are existing in the world as a global good, rather than as a privatized arrangement or agreement.
Yeah, Okay, thanks. So I wanted to make two quick comments on the IP issue. And I think that, in a way, the situation we find ourselves in is as a result of the commodification of science. And if we think about science as public good, and we think about being on the brink of an existential crisis, then we definitely need to rethink this issue, because they are diametrically opposed. So if science is going to be a public good, then we need to be looking at equitable access to knowledge that benefits all of humanity and is not selective about who benefits and who doesn't. The second part around young and early career scientists, I think many national science academies and also international bodies have a component of young affiliates. And I was glad there was mention of ICTP, the International Center for Theoretical Physics, because I think they sort of created this whole idea of Abdus Salam in ICTP, and the various workshops over the years, bringing people together, showed how this gathering of people from across different regions is an important science diplomacy tool. And as a science diplomacy tool, very early in your career, when you learn to work with each other, you know each other beyond just the problem you're solving, but as people, you realize we have more in common than less. And that sets the basis for the kind of vision we all trying to articulate that will ensure a better and sustainable future.
I just wanted to briefly comment on the issue of funding again, but for development specifically, the SDGs were invoked and development agendas. And in my experience, there are two major funding streams that are very difficult to bring together, and yet if they were brought together, they would really increase the opportunities for international collaboration. So there's one funding stream for national research, and there's one funding stream for international development. And these two very rarely, if ever, come together. And so they may each encourage collaboration, but they don't encourage international collaboration. And I think this is really an arena that is not difficult to work on, but it means institutional change as well as change in mindset. So I just wanted to also just from this region, there is so much interest in the countries of the region, especially the wealthier countries of the region, to collaborate globally, but not as much regionally. And yet, I think the global collaboration would be much strengthened if it was built on a regional collaboration as well.
I like that idea because I do feel that regional collaboration is probably one of the steps that we are missing when we talk about collaboration. And I go to you, Dr. Saif, on that.
Yeah, my addition to this, actually, the issue of intellectual property. Of course, collaboration requires, of course, sending, especially in R&D, sending proposals, and also in terms of patents and reviews and stuff like that. So sometimes the IP issue is really pop-ups and prevent collaboration. Just people sometimes fear that their ideas might be stolen, or sometimes you get the idea rejected in a research proposal, but you will see it somewhere else is being conducted. So I think sometimes the technology might help, like blockchain, for example. I have seen some digital platform that actually can track the proposal and code or digitize or certify the proposal, so that at least minimize the leak of intellectual property. That's one component. The other component, when it comes to funding, I think some international systems and indicators do not encourage collaboration. For example, let's take the Global Innovation Index. When it comes to measure expenditure on R&D, they count the expenditure in the place where the money is utilized and used. So that so many countries are actually, they are trying to spend their money in their homeland so that they get more points in the Global Innovation Index, and therefore push further in the ranking of the Global Innovation Index. That's an issue I think need to be resolved, and in order really to increase the collaboration between sides, especially in research and development.
Thank you. You raised two important points. One is rankings. And we know what rankings are doing to higher education and universities, and how bad they can be for development and collaboration. And now you are talking about, and you talk also about IP, and we are working with WIPO on a toolkit that will analyze IP under the open science recommendation of UNESCO, and see how these two concepts can really be working together towards a more collaboration. But I'm going back to you because you are in instance a regional organization, and I wonder how these questions that came from the floor, in your academy, it's already becoming a reality or not.
Thank you. I think when you in the context of the Pacific Islands as a region, certainly the regional cooperation, and I think this is really in a sense the front and center emphasis of the focus of the Pacific Academy of Science, the fact that we bring it together island states with limited resources to kind of support and not to necessarily duplicate our resources, but to enter into collaboration, and also to recognize the need to set priorities for the region, which often has been absent for a long, long time, so that we can then share with global communities and find common issues that will also help drive our local issues. That's really important to us. But and that it means the openness of and openness and transparency in science and technology is really critical for us, because handling IP issues is going to be, it's always a challenge for us. But of course, recognizing, the need to address, in any case, that too as well, issues of ethics and so forth. So a number of things that are on a list are really critical for us in terms of ethics, in terms of openness, in terms of just pushing the agenda of the Pacific Island, in terms of the need to really focus on the real problems that we face in the island region.
The organizers gave us a little bit of time. We have 15 minutes more. I ask the colleagues in the floor to support us with the micros, because I will ask for 2-3 short questions.
We have
yes, we
a
have
question.
already. Okay. Yes.
Can I take a question, please?
Yes.
Right. We've been discussing about the violent conflicts and science for peace, and now we are facing weaponized artificial intelligence and drone warfare. While we talk of collaboration and peace initiatives, should the ICS be taking a stand against war? How can we talk about collaboration, research, and sustainable development goals when bombs are raining down? Aren't scientists at least indirectly responsible for these killing machines?
Thank you. I have another one, I think, there.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this is Tanas Pak from Teesside University in the UK, representing the International Society for Porous Media. You're talking about problems of trust and problems at the global when we have international collaboration. I am hoping to try and explore ways to deal these problems. And in my time, I've led a few projects that are basically involving the UK, Brazil, China, Nigeria, several other countries. And what I can see clearly, there is a lack of mutual understanding in terms of the research culture that is basically shaping the way we conduct research in different countries.
Thank you.
No,
what is your question?
The solution, I think...
But be fast, because we need to take someone, and we need to give the... Please.
Sure. So I think the solution is for funding bodies to incorporate an element of training, as well as basically managed and facilitated forums in order to make sure that everyone is on the same page.
Thank you.
And I want to direct this question to Mark because of his experience with UKRI. I haven't seen anything in UKRI, but elsewhere as well.
Your question is, how can the funding agencies support forums
international collaboration?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, thank you.
Last one.
Hello, yes. My name is Dr. Saeed Rawahi from Oman College of Health Sciences. I was thinking with my colleagues here, do we have, we have food bank that collaborate for food, but do we have an international bank to support research? So my suggestion is, if we could do this, it will really help to fund international research. I'm not sure if there is, but I'm asking this question.
Thank you. I don't think so, and maybe we need the International Development Bank for research. So maybe we start with this provocation. Any of the panel members want to respond to some of the comments, questions? Mark, you had one direct to you.
I'm afraid that warfare has always been a stimulus to research. And the idea that new technologies will not be used for warfare, I'm afraid history tells us is wrong. And the challenge has been no technology has ever been controlled. You can imagine someone, when fire was discovered, how to make it, saying, terrible, it'll burn people. So I think, I can't believe there's anyone in this room that thinks that war is a good idea. But I think that we've got to, ISC in my opinion anyway, has got to actually, as far as possible, promote the peaceful use of science, but actually standing out and saying war is a bad thing is probably not the role of a science organization. On the training point, the majority of grants offer the possibility of training, everything from graduate students, but training is actually an intrinsic part of the process of science. And actually, I've always thought it wrong that the only metric for a researcher is what have you discovered. Because one of the most important things researchers do is train other researchers. And so the question of who have you trained and what have they done ought to be a more important one.
Thank you. And maybe for the panel also on this and following up on you, Mark, we didn't speak about higher education and how we train our future researchers and our future leaders. And I think that shift of culture that we are talking about, the mobility with young researchers, how can we shape through our higher education institutions also curricula that is more multidisciplinary, that is more recognizing diversity as a good thing on research? I mean, what's the role? Any of you would like to answer?
So maybe I could start, Lydia. And I think the one thing we talk about the knowledge we generate and how that can get to key decision makers. But there's a part, I think, as we rethink how we need to approach this process, which is an all-of-society approach. So that includes civil society, private sector, governments, and scientists working together. And that means that the way we think about education from primary school, high school, to higher education institutions needs to be we need to rethink it and also to look at how some of these disruptive technologies have a way, because I think if we think about it smartly and carefully, that we can accelerate that process. But there's no doubt that to be better prepared for the current and the next century, we have to not do business as usual. And I don't have an answer for how to do it, but I think that's one of the wicked problems we need to put our heads on together.
Thank you. And please, Ambassador.
Thank you. Very quickly then, first of all, just to respond to our colleague from Oman who asked about a bank or a kind of arrangement for research. It's not such a crazy idea. I think it's something that can be promoted within the context of the international platforms. For example, during our work for the SDGs, and by the way, just for the record, Ambassador Korosi and I were the chairs of the open working group that came up with the SDGs. During that work, we also identified the need for a technology bank for the SDGs. And there's no reason why we cannot come together to try to come up with a bank for research. In that case, it was for least developed countries. But, you know, this can be for others. So it's something that is worth thinking about, and maybe the Oman regional office can take that initiative forward into the international community. Secondly, this whole, geopolitics is here to stay. I happen to agree that, we can't bury our head in the sand on this one. And the question is, what do we do about it? How do we organize ourselves to make sure that we minimize the negative and perverse impacts of geopolitics? And I think we have to work harder and more consistently in promoting international platforms and safeguarding them and protecting them as a global community. We have to do this. This onslaught that we are seeing against international platforms like WHO, like UNESCO in the past, is uncalled for. And what it does is undermine trust and undermine the very institutions that build trust and that help people to come together and give scientists actually an additional platform for their work. We saw that in the context of our work for the Sustainable Development Goals, that we had to put together a special entity within the UN, which had never been there before, to try to help scientists galvanize their work to support the SDGs. This is something that I think we can do moving forward to build the kind of trust that we need. The treaties that we have, global treaties, are also under siege. Again, because of people who do not believe in the importance of building trust across countries and between communities. But we have to protect collectively the international treaties and agreements, both scientific but also political, that ensure that they limit the consequences of negative science, but also advance what would be the positive science impacts in our world. So I think there's a lot that we can do in that regard moving forward.
Thank you. Yes, Stanley? Yeah.
Very briefly about research and war. From a social science perspective, and coming from a country that just a month ago was being bombed, I see the researchers in our networks insisting on research, insisting on continuing research as a form of resistance, as a form of fighting for peace, as a way of creating an opposing narrative to the narrative of war. Now, we are also not naive, and the social sciences were weaponized in wars and continue to be weaponized in wars. We saw this in the World Wars, we saw it in the Vietnam War, in Afghanistan, in so many places. However, I think there's a real possibility for peace-minded institutions and people to work together for a different kind of research under the conditions of war. This is a long discussion, but
an important one, and we are designing at UNESCO and with WAS and other partners this science in emergency or science in crisis initiative, precisely in one hand how to support researchers in situations of war, of danger, of even persecution, but also to build the other side of the emergency, that is a more stable collaboration. So Karisha also can speak a little bit about it, and the other colleagues from TOAS and IPA that are here. So any final from you two, any final comments? No? Okay, so we are in time. The 15 minutes are just there, so I really want just to continue this conversation. This is a continuation throughout the 2 days that we will have on the dialogue. And clearly the issue of mobility, the issue of funding, and dear Minister, maybe Oman can start negotiating this international funding mechanism for science in a kind of international development bank for research. And how can we explore further some of the activities and the initiatives that are already in place that can help us to really build an agenda in different ways of doing and designing scientific collaboration, having at the center the young people, because I think this aspect is fundamental, and therefore also our institutions of our learning. In UNESCO, we have two opportunities that I think are huge. One is the Decade of Sciences for Sustainable Development. How can we put science at the center of sustainable development in the different multi-dimensional approaches that sustainable development have? And part of it is, of course, Science for Peace is needing collaboration, but also the interface between science, policy, and society. And the second one that is part of the decade is the Science Diplomacy Initiative. We are starting with a ministerial meeting in Paris this March, and I hope many of you will participate. It's a hybrid meeting also, and so hopefully we'll continue also building in some of the ideas that came here. So again, thank you so very much. I think the panel deserves a round of applause. It's an incredible panel. And really thank you also to you of being here, of putting questions. And I think we have lunch now, what is quite important. So thank you again for being here and for sharing your ideas.
Hello, thank you. It's lunch downstairs in the atrium, but can I remind everybody, if you haven't picked up your badge, you can do so outside the exhibition hall. And after this lunch at 2:30, there are 3 parallel sessions. So session 1 is Transforming Science, Open Science, Research Assessment and Science Publishing in Junior Ballroom A. The next session at the same time is Open Science for Sustainability in Junior Ballroom B. And the third session is the Changing Context for Science Diplomacy, and that will be right back here. So do be prompt at 2:30 and enjoy your lunch.